The average solo GP is dead. Being handcuffed to a practice that only makes money while you're drilling crushes your freedom. Being trapped at the office is no way to experience life. And doing more fillings and crowns ain't the answer to freedom. Stop it. Freedom comes when your practice makes money without you. Freedom is choosing how many days and how you dental. Ready to forge your freedom? Then keep listening to become a super GP and super CEO. This is the Titanium Practice Podcast with your host, Dr. Stephen Freeman. Let's go.
Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to what's sure to be the best episode of the Titanium Practice Podcast yet. I am your host and personal freedom coach, Dr. Stephen Freeman. How y'all doing today? So I decided to actually go back and split this latest episode into two parts. It's talking about Michael Gerber's famous book, The E-Myth Revisited, and it's foundational to what we are trying to teach at the Titanium Practice. And so the whole idea is the fact that most likely what you have done is you've created a very high-paying job for yourself and not truly a business. And so how you create a business for yourself is how you get other people to generate money for you while you're out doing the things that you want to do. That is a business. A high-paying job is one where you go in every single day and you generate and provide the services for other people. And so the E-Myth Revisited talks about how we can get you to what is truly a business rather than just a really high-paying job. I am not the most technological, especially when it comes to audio recordings person out there, so you're probably going to hear a little bit of my intro redone again in the very beginning of this podcast, but if you'll stick with it, we'll get rolling into the information as quickly as we can after it. All right, hope you enjoy this episode and listen to this one first, and then we'll obviously listen to part two coming up in a couple days. All right, thanks. Bye. Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to what should be the best episode of the Titanium Practice Podcast yet. I'm your host and personal freedom coach, Dr. Stephen Freeman. How y'all doing today? Before we get rolling here, real quick, if you like what you are hearing, if you'll hit the subscribe button and also head on over to titaniumpractice.com at some point in time and sign up for our free newsletter. To make sure that you are staying up with everything I've got for you. It's actually even easier to do a newsletter for you to get all the information we need to get out to you than it is just by doing these podcasts. So if you head over there at some point in time, get set up with that so we can get you everything that we need to. All right. So with that, let's go and let's start talking today about what we are going to talk about. And what I wanted to do is do a little bit more of a deep dive into a book that I have mentioned in the past. It is foundational to essentially what we are doing here about trying to get you guys your freedom. And what that is the book is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And so in a nutshell, what the E-Myth is talking about is the entrepreneurial myth. And basically the idea of just because you own a business that you are actually an entrepreneur and that you are actually owning a business. Most of us, especially when we first start out owning a practice, essentially what you have done is you have actually just created a high-paying job for yourself. That's all you've done. Okay? And it created a lot of effort and a lot of work to get to that point. But essentially, if you've just created a job for yourself, that's all you've done. Where the real, true business comes from is when that practice makes money when you are not there. That is the true essence of what I'd really like for you to get all out of this. So, or out of Titanium Practice as a whole. So, you're welcome to walk whatever path it is that you want to walk. Some people don't want a big organization, and that's absolutely fine. You don't need a big organization. I mean, in reality, a $1 million, or really a dental office should be netting at least 20% all by itself after everything when you're all said and done. So in theory, if you've got a $1 million practice and you're netting 20% of that above doctor pay and all the bills out the door, you're making $200,000 a year. And for some of you may be saying, well, $200,000 isn't enough for me, and that's okay. But I'm just saying is you can run a 5-op practice that does $1 million a year with an 80% overhead and make $200,000 a year never picking up a handpiece. That is a very, very, very attainable goal. It's actually pretty easy to do in reality. And again, 200 may not be your number. You may want more than that. But that's a pretty good lifestyle, because to run a 5-op practice, you don't need too many employees. There's not too many people that you need to be in control of in order to achieve that. But some of you may want to shoot higher. So like 20% of a $2 million practice. I mean, now we're getting somewhere at $400,000. But the complexity keeps going up. The more people you add to all this, the complexity increases, and the number of decisions and the people that bitch and moan about things goes up exponentially. It is not a linear increase. It is an exponential increase. And it's crazy. The more people you throw into the situation, and it's not just staff, it's also patients. It's crazy. Like when you get a big practice going, you're just bringing more people in, which increases the likelihood of a pissed off patient. It just is. I mean, that's just the nature of what ends up happening when you have that many people walking through the door. I can't remember what the exact number is. We have over 2,000 appointments a month at the office of everything from a re-cement temp to, full mouth rehabilitation. I mean, depending on what those steps are. I don't remember the exact number. I just know it's something over 2,000. And it's every time someone comes in, people that complain about things are much more likely to vocalize those things to the world, i.e. reviews on Google, than they are to someone who comes in with a great experience that they are to tell their friends. A pissed off person's much more likely to tell someone than someone who's really happy with what's going on. So those things compound on each other as you grow a bigger organization. But you could absolutely have a 5-op office that does $1 million a year that nets 20%, and you really don't need to do hardly anything. And that's pretty good. Working no days and making $200,000 a year, that ain't too bad. But generally speaking, when we first open our practice, that's it. We think we're entrepreneurs. That's awesome. I've started a business. And by definition, you have, but really what you've done is you created a high-paying job for yourself. So the whole premise of what I'm trying to do at Titanium Practice is to free you up from that practice so that it is either making money while you are not there, or not having a practice that dominates your life in every aspect. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you have a bad day at the office, how many of you come home with smiles on your face? Your spouse or your kids come to greet you at the door, and you're just sunshine and rainbows. I mean, everything's amazing when you had a shitty day at the office. Conversely, you have a good day at the office, you have a little bit more bounce in your step. You kind of bounding in through that door, and you're a little bit happier to see everybody else. So it affects your personality. It affects who you are every single day. And the more we can pull you away from that, the more we're going to see an increase in your overall happiness. It's that simple. You know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of you are emotionally tied to that practice, and it's very, very, very difficult to separate the two of them. But the further you get away from being the primary care provider in your office, the more you remove yourself from that bullshit that happens every single day that really affects your emotions. And it does, and we're human. When something goes bad, you feel bad. I mean, this isn't rocket science. So it's pretty simple to do. So what are some steps that you need to be taking that they talk about in the E-Myth about things that you can do to kind of create more of a business? And truly, if you're going by the definition of this, we got to have associates. There's just no two ways about it. You need to have associates in order to be able to have a true business, something that's producing money while you are not there. So, full stop on that. I mean, if you want something that generates money while you're not there, you need to have providers that are there producing when you are not there. It's that simple. Okay? Now, we can talk all you want about getting you away from clinical chair time as much as possible, because doing specialty procedures generates so much more per hour than general dentistry does that we can get you away from the chair. But if you're still the only one in your office that can place an implant, or still the only one that can do endo or ortho or whatever, the specialty is, now you've created a really, really high paying job, which is awesome. And you can do that. And this might not be the episode for you to listen to, and that's okay. But if you really want to create a business where it is generating money when you are not there, like I've mentioned it before, I'm going to Europe in a couple weeks, and I'll be gone for about, I think it's 15 days. It'll make just as much money as if I were here in, Florida doing what I do on a daily basis. It does not need me in order to generate money. So what are some things that he talks about? And Michael Gerber talks about setting clear goals. You need to define what success looks like to you. No one can define that for you. Just like I said just a moment ago, you may not want some big business. I got a lot of employees, and there's a lot of emotions that come with those employees. And again, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you may not want that. That's fine. You may want something that's so much more manageable. And there are days that I'm like, man, I really should have had something more manageable. It's tough. It is tough. But every solution presents its own problems. One of my favorite sayings is just the fact that, I've got an office that doesn't need me to run. Flip side is I get to hear about all this wonderful drama that comes with it. And, they're just people too. We can talk about mission, vision, core value all we want, about staying in line with all that stuff, but people veer off that path. They veer off the path, and that's okay. But you need to define what your goals are. And his next part after that is being consistent. So why am I almost pairing those two together is because you need to define what you want, and you need to stick with that plan. And I would encourage you to say you got to stick with it for a year. Because here's a lot of the time what happens is that we get so caught up in, let's say you want to blow this thing up and you want to have a giant practice and you're just going to ramp up marketing and do some things to really just blow up the practice. Or you're going to bring in, you've decided, hey, this sounds great. Let's bring the specialty procedures into the office. There is a lag in the money, and we make decisions on the money. It's how we base kind of how our emotions is based upon the money. So a lot of the time, though, is the money is the thing that comes after the work has been put into place. So let's say, for example, you decide you're going to start placing implants. You're not really going to start seeing a huge change in your profitability for a number of months. Well, why is that? 1, you got to get better at placing implants. 2, implants take time to integrate. They take time to integrate. So you're not going to even get the crown portion of this. So let's say you place 10 implants today. Like you just go all in right now and say, I'm going to place a bunch of implants. You place 10 implants today. They're not integrating for 3 months or so, depending on what timeline you want to go on. My timeline, I have 3 months. All right, great. So 3 months from now, you will now see the crown portion of your implant come in. All right, great. Well, what about these other things? What about you identify a bunch of patients who need extractions and grafts? Okay, well, awesome. So I see in my practice over the years, it's around 40% of patients who come to me from an external referral, or even, to be honest with you, it doesn't need to be external, need an extraction and they need a graft. Great. All right, so we're going to take the tooth out, we're going to graft the site, and we look at it and then we say, cool, now I need 3 months for this to turn over into bone before I can place my implant. So you could identify, again, let's say 10 patients who need implants. That means 4 of them are going to need extractions and grafts, and 6 of them you can place the implant on now, but you're not going to get the crown portion of it for 3 months, and you're not going to get the implant portion of it for 3 months from the patients that needed the extraction and grafts. So this takes time. So those that you need extractions and grafts, you're looking at like 7 months before they're done. That takes time. So it takes consistency with sticking to that goal of whatever it is that you'd set to. I am the least patient person you are ever going to meet. Ever. Consistency is one of my biggest problems I've got, because in my head I'm like, all right, I've decided to do the thing, so I should see the result tomorrow. Once I decide to do something, the result should be tomorrow. And I'm just not patient enough to wait to see those results. But that takes time. It takes time. Think how long it took you to get to where you are today. You cannot just turn that ship overnight. It needs some time, and that's okay. You just need to set those plans and those goals and then set off on it and stay on that path, and it will work. It will absolutely work. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do, you may say, well, I'm not going to just do implants for 7 months. I want to add the endo thing to it too. That's fine. Or I want to do the ortho part to it, or I want to add veneers, or that's totally fine. You can add those other things while you're going, but you need to keep your eye on the destination of where it is that you're headed and consistently moving toward that, and not just jumping all over the place and say, well, I tried the implants, it didn't do anything about raising, my profits and things like that, and that's it, I'm done. And you gave it like 2 or 3 months. You're going to get nowhere with that. You're going to get nowhere with that. I think it's better if you're willing to focus primarily on saying, hey, I'm going to choose implants and not bring those other things on like endo or ortho right away. Because I think if you really focus on something, you're going to see a better result, but that's okay, because I know people get bored. They want to see the shiny thing come in, like that old, squirrel, they get distracted. But if you really truly focus on it, I think you're going to see tremendous results, and that will get you out of that chair faster. That'll get you out of that chair so much faster. But I know that the people kind of get, turned on by the shiny thing. And so sometimes it's fun to start those things. But as long as you realize that we have charted our implant course and we're going to stay on it, or we've charted our endo course and we're going to stay on it, and you're not going to give up on it, and you need to understand it's going to take some time to filter down to the bottom line, because the money in the bank is the absolute last thing that comes. And it's the most frustrating thing, because you've done the work and you want the money, because that money is going to equal their options, and your options are going to lead to your freedom. But you got to be patient and consistent and stick to those goals. And when you have those goals, you got to break them down a little bit further so that they're small and attainable. It's like, okay, well, I want to get into the implant game. Maybe you need to start on feeling more comfortable in doing extractions and grafts. All right, so now I've got a goal that we're going to do extractions and grafts. Or maybe you want to see a boost. We're trying to get you out of doing these things. What if we can get a boost out of the hygiene? Like, how good is your fluoride acceptance rate? And you may say, how is fluoride going to get me out of the chair? Well, shoot, if you're charging $25 or so every single time someone gets fluoride, and right now you get people, I don't know, I've talked to offices where they get like 2 people a month. I can't do the math off the top of my head, but let's say you've got 2 hygienists right now and they see 8 to 10 patients a day. What if you had an 80 to 90% acceptance rate of that $25 per fluoride application every time they came in? It adds up. It adds up. So make small, manageable goals that you can get to. It doesn't need to just be about creating specialty procedures in your office, but that's one of the ways that we can get there. All right?
You've been listening to the Titanium Practice Podcast with your host, Dr. Stephen Freeman. Please hit the like and subscribe button and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Titanium Practice. Questions or comments? Send an email to info@titaniumpractice.com. Join us next time to help turn your average practice into a titanium practice.